They hanged the notice. At dawn, the paper thin as mercy. Public hearing. Fraud and embezzlement. Elias Crow. I read it twice, then folded it into my coat like a keepsake. Elias Crow had been my mentor once. He taught me how to sharpen sentences until they cut, how to sign my name so it looked inevitable. When my novel burned, figuratively and then literally, he smiled and told me to start again. 2 months later, his book won every prize. Mine was promised. The same plot, the same turns of phrase. My name, nowhere. People say revenge is loud, that it wants blood and spectacle. Mine wanted ink. I returned to the city, under a borrowed surname, and rented a room above a printer's shop that smelled of oil and old metal. At night, the presses breathed like animals. I wrote during those hours. My fingers blackened, my heart precise. I wrote affidavits disguised as essays, testimonies disguised as footnotes. I wrote truth with the patience of a forger, matching Elias's voice so perfectly that even his editor would feel flattered. Elias's fall didn't begin with me, it began with his hunger. He had grown reckless, careless with receipts and donors, drunk on applause. I only gathered the crumbs he left. The trick is not to accuse, but to invite. I mailed his publisher a flattering critique, unsigned, praising his signature, realism, and offering archival notes that would strengthen future editions. Inside were copies of invoices, artfully annotated. No blame, just context. He called me 2 days later. I know your hand, Elias said. You always over-explain. I learned from you, I replied, and hung up. He tried to bury it. He tried to buy silence. He tried to spin. The city, bored of saints, loves a clever sinner. Rumors softened into headlines. Headlines hardened into dates. By the time the notice went up, Elias had lost his sponsors, his smile, his certainty. On the day of the hearing, rain needled the courthouse steps. I sat in the back, anonymous as a comma. Elias entered pale and proud, still wearing the scarf he favored in interviews. When he spoke beautifully. He always did. Words can be weapons. They can also be smoke. The prosecution called their witnesses. Numbers marched. Emails sang. Then the judge asked for final statements, and Elias's lawyer leaned close to him, whispering like a priest. Elias stood. I would like to submit a final document, he said, and looked directly at me. The bailiff passed the pages forward. The judge frowned, adjusted her glasses, and began to read. The room shifted. A murmur ran the benches like a match along a fuse. It was my work, my book, printed in Elias's font, with his foreword, his dedication. On the margins, footnotes bloomed like bruises. Timestamps, drafts, metadata, every seed of proof I had planted months before. At the end, a single sentence in my handwriting. Authorship is not a costume, it is a scar. Elias had tried to save himself by claiming confession, an artistic experiment, a commentary on ownership. He hadn't realized that my notes were traps. Each footnote contradicted his testimony, each reference a door he'd already locked himself behind. They recessed. When they returned, the verdict was brief. Guilty. Outside, the rain had stopped. Reporters clustered like birds. Elias was led away, the scarf gone, his hands bare. For a moment, his eyes found mine again. There was no hate there, no plea, only recognition. He nodded once, as if conceding a well-played line. I left the city that night. Revenge had done its work. It did not need applause. In my Suitcase was a new manuscript. Clean and honest. I sent it to a small press that valued contracts more than crowns. It sold modestly. It survived. Years later, a student wrote to me, asking how to protect her work. Write everything down. I replied, keep your drafts. And remember, silence can be edited. Sometimes justice is a gallows. Sometimes it's a margin note that refuses to be ignored.